grossly intimidating to be in front of an audience of such magnitude and involved in such vast affairs. As you know, as mentioned, I work for CBC Radio, so I'm not used to audiences. Yeah, that's going to get back. And I work for television, so I'm not used to smart ones. Oh my. This is all a secret between the 500 or 600 of us. I do want to say thank you, though. It's for a number of reasons, even before I get into the substance of the talk. I find, for example, and it's true every time, and I like to come, I really do like British Columbia. It's not a put on. I come here and I get overwhelmed, and it's a bit strange. I get overwhelmed by homesickness. I mean, I look either here today or somewhere, sometimes in Vancouver, you look out and you see the great verdant landscape of British Columbia. You see those sublime mountains, and you see the still, almost paradisical waters of either inland or the harbors. And on days when the sun is there, the sky is just a picture of Eden Garden before the snake. I mean, and I see these, and then, you know, I realized, you know, that, you know, mix the things together. If you took away, you know, just the verdant trees, and if you eliminated the valleys and the mountains and didn't particularly care if the sun was shining, this could be Newfoundland. I should also tell you I got other reasons for saying thank you for being here, because according to Newtonian mechanics and nothing else, Newton, as you know, made it very clear to all of us that any wretched body, wretched or not, cannot be in two places at the same time. And the deduction is quite obvious that if I'm here now, I'm not in Toronto. And that's an edification that is both moral and hygienic. Now, I know we all, and I know I do seriously, we all wish Mayor Ford, and I do. In my own way, as you know, I'm a strange human being. In my own way, I like him, but I also recognize that he has a flair for mildly eccentric behavior. But having wished him well, I also wish to tell you that, speaking now as a refugee from Toronto and Toronto politics, I don't think I had ever encountered what passes for politics in the great urban state of Toronto. It is just unbelievable. And my conclusions about the city are fairly dark. Originally, I thought it was just a normal piece of madness. But now I've come to the determination. I've been reading especially the Old Testament and some of the more bitter prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah. And my conclusion is that God has abandoned the city of Toronto. Just not going to have anything more to do with it. If he gets a couple of prayers from Sarnia or Nipissing, answer right away. Toronto, not even on the list. Not even. But let's not be too hard. And by the way, you may have detected that I'm digressing. But I haven't even begun yet, so that's kind of a logical trick. How do you get off the path if you're not on it? With those Zen teasers, I hope to while away in the morning. No, but I can't let this pass. I really can't. I mean, you're a wonderful audience, and it's municipal. I also have to tell you about a little bit about my municipal background, but I just can't let it go. A lot of people were kind of making mild fun of Toronto under its current stewardship, but I arrived here 19 years ago. Now, I'm from Newfoundland, and I arrived in early December, and I was down on Yonge Street there, I think it was around in January sometime, and standing under one of those great big street lights they have on the corners of Yonge Street. You've probably seen them. I wasn't selling anything, by the way. Who would buy? But this was, stop it. You're bad people. This was during the declared state of emergency, under which a previous mayor, who is looked upon now as the Aristotle of his trade, named Mel Lastman, had summoned the great military of our nation because there was a sprinkling of snow that if you dusted all of Yonge Street would probably cover one donut. And this, of course, was anxiety and alarm to the stranded city of Toronto. And an image I caught from across the street. I was looking over at one of those upscale coffee shops. I think it was Timothy's or Second Cup. And here you had one of those wonderful camouflage army Humvee vehicles, huge things. A lot of the soldiers were out sitting on the great tank-like building. And their sergeant was coming out of the Second Cup. And in his left hand, or in his right arm, he had the normal rifle of the preparing soldier. And in his left hand, he had a styrofoam tray carrying 6 huge grandes of Swiss Lackermacher or whatever the hell it is. And I said, you know, this is war as we have never seen it. Summon the coffee brigade. And I'm not letting you go, I'm still digressing. But if there's any luck, I'll be finished before I start. But I gotta tell you, because it's true. This is what makes it so much fun. Mr. Laskin was also presiding Platonic genius when Toronto was staggered, if you recall, by the alarms of the SARS epidemic. This was real, it was quite serious. They had a wonderful medical staff, by the way, they really do. The lady doctor who ran that crisis, unfortunately, she passed away since, but she really was a wonder. That truly is something that should be said. But anyway, the SARS crisis occurred, and naturally the world became somewhat alarmed, and then the World Health Organization issued, which they should, an alert that in Toronto you had some possibility, you know, that SARS was prevalent. And so they issued a travel alert. Beware of SARS in travel. Now Mr. Laskin got really upset. And he convened a huge press conference in the convention center. I think he hooked up with half the world, and even Larry King was on live, if that's not a contradiction in terms. There weren't any surplus neurons at that meeting, let me tell you. I think I should have stayed in bed this morning. Anyway, he got the whole world on him, and the doctors are all behind him in their white coats, and I'm not making it up, it's true. You've seen the movie. He's standing there and he's saying, Toronto's a great city, we're a safe city, and these people, who are these people? Who are these people? And Shirley Bashir, who was that wonderful woman I'm talking about, she disconnected herself from all the other doctors, and she came over to the microphone, and you could hear the whisper. She's whispering in his ear, Mayor Laskin, it's the World Health Organization, it's the WHO. He said, yes, I know. Who are they? Who are they? Like Abbott and Costello come to life. So, you know, if you're looking at Toronto these days and offering prayers to some unknown God who's willing to accept them, please realize that Toronto has had torments before this, and its early history is not exactly an alpine peak of intellectual excellence either. Now, Nab mentioned, I'm still going to digress, I'm sorry, I got a lot to get going here this morning. It's only fair before I do get into something that at least bends towards relevance, that I treat Nab's very candid epitome and history of my success in Newfoundland politics. It is true that I ran twice. He was very generous to point that out. And he was even more generous, he pointed out that I lost. Which is a daring thing to announce to an audience, the first part. I mean, nobody really, if you know my province, nobody really wants to be known in the public of people with some moral value that you were engaged at any time in the elected politics of Newfoundland. It operates on the same plane of social esteem as throwing rocks at a convent or stealing sheep for the purpose of carnal engagement. Newfoundland is a very lonely place.
So much information.
We have some spectacular sheep. No, I did run. I'm going to make it really quick because I am going to veer into what pertains to substance. I did run. They not only didn't vote for me, I mean, this was a hurricane of rejection. I think a pair of socks that had been left in sneakers for 6 years would have got more votes than I did. They not only said, we don't want you, they said, you know, just leave. I lost the first election by 140 votes. I lost the second one only 8 months later by 5,700. And they say voters can't be educated. I beg to differ. Now, I could go on like this forever, unfortunately, and you don't need that. I really do want to say something that possibly connects with why you're here, the nature of municipal government, politics in general, because I really think that politics needs some vast repair. And my last little personal note is a small one, is that for a long time while I was in Newfoundland, before I kind of got exiled into the downtown streets of Toronto, a long-time associate of mine was 25 years as a town clerk in a very small town in Newfoundland. I mention it only because daily communication with him, even though it's a very small town, you get to watch with a closer eye just what it is that municipal administration is on the smaller level. I've also known the mayors of fairly big towns. I've spoken to the municipalities back home any number of times, and obviously the cities as well. So there is some connection. One thing I want to use from those days, I always remembered it. Joey Smallwood was then premier, and those of you who can't remember him, he's the reason that our politics was more crazy than yours, and that's quite a distinction. He's like a Tasmanian devil. Not a man that was great on democracy. His idea of a caucus meeting was to have a second thought. Which is probably one more than most are giving it these days. But he came out, we were late in getting municipal government. The outports, as you know, are formed by history. We confederated only in 1949, but we finally did. And there was a contest with the municipalities sometime in the mid-60s. And the phrase is what I'm bringing up. You've heard it before. And when Smallwood wasn't getting his way, he's the premier, but these are the municipalities. These are the people who live in the towns. These are the people who live in the small villages. These are the people who live in, by Newfoundland standards, the cities. And Smallwood came out with this ardent declaration. He said that municipal governments are nothing. Town councils are nothing but creatures, and he picked his word, a biblical flavor, but creatures of the provincial government. And implicit in that was, if we will give them life, they will have life. If we deny it, they will be denied. If they have wants and wishes, they may pray, but they may never demand. That municipal administration is just the afterthought of democracy, and that provincial governments, so this is a long while ago, see them only almost as robotic creatures. And even in my time, and even in those days, even I knew that if something was troubling the town of Placentia, or if there were some dissonance either with services being delivered, or employment, or unemployment, more likely troubling, that at the municipal level, I was involved in a number of municipal movements myself. This is where, in any modestly understandable democracy, any society that cares for itself, that the effort begins. So with that premier, who's now no longer with us, but with his words, you are creatures of the provincial government, as a kind of backdrop. I want to move forward and tell you, and I hope to do it reasonably briefly, tell you the story of about 5 or 6 towns. We would call a couple of them cities, but you wouldn't. A couple of 5 or 6 towns in Newfoundland. I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. It's a story that's set in Newfoundland, but it's not about Newfoundland. It's about the towns. It's about community responses. It's about the living tissue of citizens who live with each other within a pool of more or less common values, and how they act when exceptional circumstances forces them to take action that normally would never be called on. I'm not going to dwell on the actual crisis. This was September 2011, 2001.